channel. As always, we are joined by our director Eva Hussein, and our guest for this week is Habir Klang. Habir will be taking an in-depth look into the ethnic media landscape and will be discussing his experiences as a migrant and a community leader. If you would like to learn more about the migrant community and their experiences, subscribe to our YouTube channel where we upload videos weekly. We'd also like to announce that we'll be hosting the 6th annual Vic Forum, Unmasking the Pandemic, COVID, CALD, and Communication. Our keynote speaker for this year is Dr. Brett Sutton. If you would like more information, visit our Facebook page where you can access the registration link. We'll also be leaving it in the comments below. Over to you, Eva.
Thank you so much, Sarah. Well, firstly, welcome Habri to this morning's session. It's been about 12 months, maybe 11 since we last spoke. So we're very, very interested and keen to learn, firstly, how you've been and what's going on in your world. And at the end of this session, we'll remind people about the forum, which we're very excited about. We've been working for it for a couple of months now. And the theme of the forum that we're organizing is called Unmasking the Pandemic. So I wanted to throw to you, as we're coming out of COVID situation, have we unmasked everything that's been going on? And firstly, what's been going on in your space?
Well, yeah, thanks for having me. Yeah, it's been a while, but a lot has happened over the year, I suppose, and we are in a totally different world now. But with regards to the last year or so and whatever has happened, I think there has been a lot of lessons learned, a lot of issues that have come up, especially related with the migrant communities. We've seen a lot of things happening. The media had to sort of restart itself with the new pandemic sort of era, as we have to revert to all the online media issues, online media radio that we had to do. It was totally different experience, and then that has sort of impacted a lot of other people from different languages where they haven't been able to get in touch with some of their listeners. That has been a big issue, but I think we're slowly sort of overcoming these issues, and then we are evolving with the new future. So future looks promising, but yeah, there were a lot of issues that was faced by us and other communities as well.
Yeah, but would you say that we are pretty resilient? Because if you think back to, say March of last year, that this is around the time, I think we spoke maybe in April, where we were still very unsure about what's going to happen. And we put a lot of trust in governments, in systems, in structures, and they kind of a little bit, they failed us somewhat. So I think the role of ethnic media, where when it comes to communication, is so key and finally recognized. I think we now know that without you guys who are really on the ground there, spreading the message, in this case of health and, essentially, communication about what was going on is so essential and so key. So what specifically did we learn about the resilience of ethnic media, and what is ethnic media? If you could just remind us what that is in the first place.
Well, I would say ethnic media is probably where you can listen to someone who you trust and that person very well. And then you sort of trust that person, that the information that's being relayed is generally it's coming from a trustworthy source. I think that's probably where mainly the ethnic media sort of comes up as far as I'm concerned, because in those times there was a lot of talk going on, like what's going to happen, what's happening. Yeah. And then as far as you mentioned a little bit about government sort of response, I think that has been more sort of reactive response rather than proactive one. So the way things are, we've had issues where the translation wasn't going right. Right. The message wasn't going across well, and that has created a lot of doubts, and that has created a sense of fear in the migrant communities as well, that they're not being taken care of. And especially because that was something, code was something which we never sort of faced before, anything like that. So it was all sort of new to everyone. And then the way government have sort of put in their resources, the way they've done that, I think because they've done that after little bit of damage was done. So that's where the problem was. And then with resilience, as I would say, all the migrants generally who come in, they are sort of ready to be resilient. They know that they're going to face some issues. So that's sort of something which is inbuilt in them. So they have evolved with that. But, at the start or so, there were issues where they couldn't sort of get things going. And also, we've seen that this COVID has stopped a lot of people from getting in touch with their with their listeners. The reason being, a lot of our ethnic media broadcasters, they are of older age, and it was hard for them to adapt to the new technology as well. So they've evolved in some way, and then the listeners have sort of evolved in some way as well. Like they had to find different means with to be able to get in touch with them. And a lot of programs on some radios, which I know, they haven't been able to go on air because of this COVID business, because the actual studios were shut, and they couldn't get their programs online as in the way radio was performing, because of the technical issues they would have, and the technical knowledge is limited with them. So that has sort of made a lot of people sort of have taken people away from the messages as well, which they normally are used to listen to. So that called a need for more resilience from the people as well, that somehow they have to evolve, where they're not getting much of information, and they have that doubt in their mind as well, whether the information they're getting is trustworthy as well as not.
Right. So what you described there, Habri, is essentially like a second layer of isolation, because we were told, stay home,
Yep.
don't go out. We were only allowed to go out for an hour a day or whatever it was. But then being, for some people not being able to speak the language or English well, or understand, or sometimes the messages were not even crafted to how the communities understand them or how they acquire information. So, for example, putting everything on a governmental website is not communication, in my opinion. I mean, it's great that everything's centralized. But on the other hand, how do people know that this information even is sitting there? And also, you've just mentioned people that work at the radio station were not allowed to go in, and as you said, many of them are older, not able to use the technology. So I think we've come on this really fast journey of learning about technology, like who doesn't know what Zoom is now, and who doesn't have a microphone, and who doesn't have a camera. So I think there were some good aspects of the pandemic, I guess, if we can call it that. What were they for you and your community?
For us, the way we have evolved with the social media, and we've found a new means of getting in touch with our listeners. We'll try to tap into a lot of other things. With us, we started doing. We felt the need of doing a different language information sessions. So we at NEMBC, we started doing this news segment in different languages. We started off, we didn't have government help or at that stage, and because we were all the broadcasters, we were getting together, and we felt the need is there to be evolved, so that we can tap into different sort of medias. Like we use WhatsApp, we use other Instagrams, every possible scenario where we use that, and we sort of go try to reach to the people. And then after that, we were like getting our information from all the good sources, and then our editors were sort of putting it on, and then we all used to translate and broadcast. The thing different, as I mentioned before, was when the translation sort of goes out, I totally agree with the work those translators and interpreters do, because they are in a sort of legal binding with whatever they translate and everything. So they sometimes go word by word meaning and this and that. Sometimes that sort of loses the actual gist of what they're trying to say.
Not engaging. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So what we sort of did that in our news bulletins was we use the words which being used in the mainstream media, and then we told them that this is what it means, and then we sort of took the liberty of not translating it word by word. We sort of gave them the idea that, okay, this is what it means, and a little bit of literal meaning as well, but we try to explain that what it actually
What it
means.
actually
What
meant.
it does.
So it's a bit like translating translations, essentially. And of course, you'd know, and our listeners would know that it's sometimes to do with actually the source text, or how the English was written. And the translators have to stay true to it. But if you're wanting to engage communities, translation is sometimes not the way to go. You kind of, what you've just explained, you need to go down to the ground and speak to people in their language rather than, this official jargon or whatever it is.
Yeah.
So that's an amazing job that you guys are doing, where you sort of dissect the information that comes to you and develop it in a way, or spread it in a way that people can relate to. So I'm very interested to hear more about that. And what sort of techniques would you use? So you would grab a translation, pick things from it that were relevant, and then kind of retranslate it for the community. Is that right?
Yes. That's how it is. Mainly, we get our editors write it in English, and we then translate it. Sometimes we face the issue where editors use words like where it's not easy to translate straight into your language. Like, and the other day we used the word triple whammy. It has been triple whammy for the women in this pandemic. So we had to sort of uh, come
You
out with
adapted.
we adapted to that. We sort of made that, okay, triple whammy means this, so that they're aware that what we sort of actually translating. So I think there's other aspect as well with the translations, which I sort of found is when we do the translation and we go word by word, even though the people speak their language, then even then they have that issue of vocabulary in their language as well, because it's not just because we've translated doesn't mean they will understand.
Right.
Because the vocabulary and the words that we use, when you sort of say go on some sort of translating website or so, where you put the word in and you get the meaning,
Right.
and that even there you have to sort of choose the word which is frequently and always been used by people, not as in the elite sort of society,
Right, not the high register.
Yeah. So there has been that kind of issues that we've had, but then again, as I said to you before, that the liberty of us, like sort of being kind of producers ourselves, that where we can sort of make it in a way where it's not just the actual translation. We make it in a way where the people can understand. So that has definitely helped us a lot in this scenario.
Right. And I don't know what the actual number is, I can't remember, but I think it's something like $54 or $63 million that the state of Victoria has spent on language services last year. And I know that organizations such as NENBC has received some money, but I often wonder, in my cynical head, where did this money go? Because if you think about it, and I understand that there are interpreters, translators, and there's like an infrastructure and hospitals and courts where people need to receive translation or translated information in. But I often wonder whether that money is actually diverted to the right place in the right way. Because what you've explained is that you still need to have people on the ground understanding the community and how they acquire information and what the channels are. And you have to go to Instagram nowadays and WeChat and all kinds of places. Do you think, Harpreet, that the governments are learning? Have they actually been listening to community leaders such as yourself?
Well, I think there has been that shift in the government, but as I mentioned to you before, it has been a reactive approach rather than the proactive one. When we had that issue of towers, when we had the other issues with the translation, that's when the government tried to get tap into the leaders. That's when they sort of felt the need of that. We've had imams like from Muslim community. They've made like a thing where where they were getting to the people that this is what is the right thing to do.
Right.
We need to support the government, but that's when they tapped into. And then with other like people from my religion, Sikh religion, we've been trying to get all the people some food as well, and then we've been trying to do that kind of stuff, where the need was basically just to support these people. Everyone has sort of come up with that idea, but if the government had sort of tapped into that community leader business before, they would have come up with those ideas,
Yes.
which the government got it later. So they had those ideas, and they knew that people trust them. So they could have used that before some of the stuff, which never would have happened.
Right.
So,
And,
yeah. Yeah.
and I think you mentioned that you know, like a lot of what was happening has been reactive, and it's surprising because you think, you know, in a state where nearly quarter of residents speak a language other than English at home, somewhere in the strategies it'll be built in. But sometimes I feel like the strategies are about box ticking rather than actually thinking through and having practical approach. Because you guys, when I say you guys, I mean the Sikh religion, you've made it into all kinds of news by just getting out there and, for example, helping with the food. So it's part of your community to help others. Is that right? What happened? Because I know that even with the towers you mentioned, you were out there cooking, delivering food, and supporting communities in a very, very practical way.
Well, that's basically, I would say it's basically in every religion to help each other out, and especially in the time of crisis. And we, so Sikhs, we pride ourselves in that, because we've been doing that. What has been given to us through our religion, this concept of community kitchen. So all we needed to do was it was all sort of set up for us. All we needed was few more volunteers, and we needed to expand it, and that's all. It was easy for us, I would say. Easy as in to sort of set it up, because we already had the kitchen set up for our religious institutions.
Right.
So it was just that it needed that drive in our volunteers and other people to just go out there and support the community, which we've been doing all along. But that so has the other, I would say, communities as well, and that has definitely helped people, and that has sort of made people aware of the things that all the in this time of crisis, we are all in it together. And as you mentioned before, with all the resilience, and these things have sort of helped people being resilient, that okay, there is someone caring over there. And with the government, I think they, at the start, they were like, okay, I will put it on the website. It's translated. It's in your language.
Yeah,
Without read it, without even being focused on what actually has written over there. Like, would it make sense to them? And secondly, what's the mean of getting to that website?
Yes.
A lot of migrant communities, like the people, they're not technically sound, and they don't know that such websites exist for them to look for in the pandemic or so. They were having a lot of other issues of themselves, like surviving through this lockdown, and little that they sit on Google and search for the government help and this and that. So as I mentioned, so government has sort of looked into it later on, but at the start there was a lot of things that were missed, and the way I hope the government have learned that lesson as well, that they need to use the channels which are already there. People like who are in ethnic media side, all those radio stations that are doing a fantastic job with connecting to their communities. The government doesn't have to do anything. All they need to do is provide that information to them, and then they can relay. As I mentioned before, people know that you've been broadcasting for that long, and they're used to getting the information from us. So they trust us with the information as well. And what we will try to do on our behalf, like we're sitting on that broadcasting chair, is make sure that the information that we pass on is really a trustworthy one. It's not like something which we think of the situation or so. We can probably say that, okay, in my opinion, this should have been done this could be the thing. But then again, the right information is needed to be passed on. That's probably the responsibility of the broadcasters as well, that they use that. And also they, in order to continue that process of all those grants you mentioned before and this and that, that grants really needed to be sorted out, as in where they are going. That was a very good
Right.
point which you mentioned, because the thing is, there are organizations, they doing this stuff, and then they take the money, and then what they do is sometimes not
clear.
doesn't come to the front. And it's maybe they have different priorities as well at that point. But really there should be an sort of auditor sort of things like that, where the money is going. And government, I know the government got their hands full at the moment with all that stuff happening and stuff, but that's very important. If all that money, all that thing they're doing, if it's not going to the right channels and to the right people, then it's of no use.
Yeah, and I think I would also say that the coordinated approach is the way to go. And of course, we were all running around and kind of panicking, like all kinds of things were happening. But I think also, Habri, that the other thing that the pandemic showed is this, that whether you live in Charnit or Turak, we are all very connected. And what one person does will affect many, many others. And I think it also brought, I don't want to focus on that, but a little bit of this kind of ugly underbelly of selfishness, and maybe people not really understanding that we all in it together. Like we kept saying it, but I don't know how much people actually thought, okay, yes, it's true. Like we are really connected at a much, much deeper level. So what would you suggest, like moving forward, all these lessons that we've just spoken about, that we hopefully all learned, what would be like top 3 things that organizations should consider when they do want to communicate with multicultural communities out there?
Well, the thing is, there's no need. I mean, there is a need, but there's not a huge need of tapping into the new channels straight away,
right.
which generally the people are not familiar with. So what we need to focus is all the channels that are existing. Use them, because people are already getting their information from them, and the government really needs to sort of give importance to the ethnic media at this stage. We had an issue where last year Channel 31 had some issues where they were like sort of closing off.
Yes.
And if you look at that channel, that has built on itself, it probably gets some grants here and there, but it is a self-surviving station. So government was trying to close it up last year or so. There were talks, and then got the extension. That's a different story. Then with the other media platforms as well, government had, I think government at the start failed to recognize these channels which were already existing. So all they needed to do was like focus on them, get into those community leaders, get to them and see how they can sort of improve. I think that's going to be a key factor from moving forward as well. That if there's any time of crisis, the government uses the channels that exist, the community leaders that are there. I think they would have learned this lesson this time, that it's the recognition, and the way to reach people is probably easier through all the already established trustworthy sources, rather than just going into this whole business of websiting. Okay, come to website, we've got this, but in your language. So that's probably the lesson learned.
That's an excellent point, because you don't need to reinvent the wheel, because there's already an ecosystem and a network of people who know each other, support each other. They also know how communication works, because really, essentially, if you work in the radio or TV, even if it's in a voluntary capacity, you have been trained and you know how to do it, and who your listeners are and how to reach them. Habri, I'm going to hand over to Hassara now for some questions. It's been a really popular session, actually, let me tell you. So welcome to everybody that's listened to us. There's quite a few people very interested in what you had to say. So Hassara, over to you for questions.
So I have a question here. What's the best way for us viewers and listeners to support ethnic media? Is there something that we can do to help the government understand the importance of this landscape?
Yes, I would say whatever channels you got, just go and talk to them and say to them that we need ethnic media, because at the moment, support them in a way like where you become member of your language, because there's a major thing in the media, in the ethnic media, is that they have the feeling of togetherness, that that person is related to us from our community. And when it's coming from that, I keep on reiterating this point, because this is what I've found, that people if it's coming from, say, the people, okay, say it's coming from my mouth, and people who've been listening to me would say that, okay, yeah, no, that's right, and this is the guy who we meet up all the time, and we have relationship with that. So in every way, you can support them, like as in get the membership going, make sure you support your broadcasters as well. And if you have some talent of yourself, just go out there. And because ethnic media is a huge sort of field, and they always in need of volunteers. So if you can help, and you know some other language, just go out there, and you have that feeling in you that you want to help the community, and that's all. And with the government, any MPs or any political parties, just tell them that we need ethnic media, and tell them how important it is. And I'm pretty sure with all this pandemic era, government has even realized that, and that's why there has been a lot of money put into this ethnic media and ethnic sources at the moment.
So we've now understood the whole point of this ecosystem. And I think, Habri, it's also fair to say that when information comes at us, we need to, in the era of pandemic or any other time, people expect it fast, yeah?
Yes.
So notwithstanding things that went on websites and brochures that were printed or whatever, when time is of essence, you are the guys to go to, because you can distribute this information very fast. And you talked about accuracy, and just the fact that it's trustworthy information, one that we can rely on, or people can rely on. That's the most important thing of the entire ecosystem or network, as I said, where you guys can grab it and run with it, and the communities within minutes or hours can be informed, rather than being isolated further. Okay, any more questions, Hazara, please?
Yeah, I have one more question here. Do you think organizations should do more active research into ethnic media? Do you think this would solve a lot of the communication issues between organizations and multicultural communities?
Yeah, organizations, I believe, they do that research as well, and then it depends what they're sort of focusing on, I suppose. With the organizations, they know who their listeners are, like with the media and other. With the media and other listeners and other avenues, so they, if they don't research aside, then it's going to be a big problem, that it's going to be going to a place where it's not needed or so. I'm sorry, what was the other question? With I think there was two questions.
Yeah, sorry. The second part of that question was, do you think it would solve a lot of the common communication issues between organizations and multicultural communities?
Yes, it will. It will. And as I mentioned, that whereas there's a need for government to tap into these channels need to evolve with the time as well. Because it was quite sad to know that a lot of broadcasters were not able to be in touch with those listeners who are so used to listening to them week in, week out, or so. So that was a big problem, and really feel for those listeners and also those broadcasters, like, which had that urge and everything, and there should have been a way, if there was like a proper researcher side, and then that could be tapped into, and they could be of some help. Something.
And Habrir, of course, we are the government. We forget that we are the people that put politicians up there. So I think the other message we probably want to send to people, anybody that's listening or anybody in our network, is that if you want to change things, you do need to become part of the solution. And I think ethnic media, to a large extent, it gives you all kinds of leadership skills, but also knowing that you're making a difference to communities, even if it's to one person who's sitting at home, isolated, doesn't know what to do, is maybe anxious. That's all that we need to kind of do, to inform and connect. And certainly you have explained to us how to do it. So with that in mind, I wanted to thank you very much for today. 12 months on, I think we have, learned massive lessons. Hopefully they stay with us. Hopefully they genuine connections that we're making, or, decision makers have now understood that there's a, there's a channel, there's a network, there's an ecosystem of people that are very ready and very willing to help. So thank you for joining us and sharing your journey with us. Best regards to your mum, who I know that has recently come, and it's been an up and down journey of trying to get her in isolation and all of that. And maybe we catch up in another 12 months to see how much better we've been doing. Hopefully it's also been a good journey for you.
Yeah, no, definitely. Thanks a lot for having me as well. And there was, I think, one point I would like to mention, which we sort of do in our all the talks, is that the mental space is very important. Right. And we on the ethnic media, we stress a lot about that. Where the people were in the lockdown and they didn't know what to do, we were like, talk to friends, talk to that. You have the help available and all that kind of stuff. So his ethnic media sort of plays a huge role in that. Yep. Where we can relate to them to the other help that is available for them. So that's going to be a pivotal thing as well, and I hope it becomes much more important in the coming time as well.
And I think you are a great advocate for all of that, and the great connector. So thank you once again. And just very briefly, if anyone wants to know about the forum we're running at the end of March, it's on the 31st of March in the morning. And we are going to have Professor Brett Sutton deliver a keynote. We know that he's very connected with the community, so we're very excited. And thank you once again, Habri, for